up in Colorado politics, but I guess Senator Bennett gets to just stay in the Senate and consider whether he wants to run for re-election next time.
That's true. And, you know, it was an interesting one. I just spoke with Phil Weiser, of course, who is the nominee, and he's a two-time attorney general. He knows how to fight Trump, too. So as people get to know him, that's also pretty exciting. It didn't surprise the people of Colorado, though, but it's an interesting race to talk about.
Yeah, and it was great to just hear from him because that's really the first I've actually seen of him. I remember reading a poll showing that he was 30 points behind, and I kind of stopped paying attention for a while, and then suddenly something happened there. So.
Yeah, no kidding. And hearing him talk, it's like, oh, he's got a lot of fight in him. He's going to be interesting to watch. And the guy he's running against is quite something, is a diplomatic way of saying it.
Yeah, to put it mildly. Yeah. Thanks, Jen.
Thanks, Lawrence.
Well, the old saying, when you've got it, flaunt it, are words Donald Trump has lived by. He has tried to flaunt his wealth in every public way possible throughout his life.
Way too early with Ali Vitale is coming up next.
And that has often meant flaunting things that did not belong to him, like some buildings that bore his name. And it has meant flaunting things that he really couldn't afford, like the yacht that he used to keep in New York Harbor until he was forced to sell it as bankruptcy closed in on him. The saying, when you've got it, flaunt it, was never meant as advice for politicians. But today, Donald Trump flaunted the single biggest piece of corruption in American history. Donald Trump showed off the largest object to ever be corruptly sought and accepted by an American politician.
The head of Boeing said, this is considered the best 747 they've ever built. And I went to Qatar, I said, I'd like to use it for a period of time because the other ones, as you know, are under construction. They'll be here in 2 years. And because, you know, the plane is 35 years old. So I said, I'd like to use it. And the Emir, Tamim, who's a great gentleman, he said, no, I'd like to make a contribution to the country.
The country isn't going to use that $400 million gift that the Emir gave to Donald Trump. The plan is for Donald Trump to be the only person who ever uses that plane. That is the corrupt plan for that plane. The United States of America already has two perfectly capable and functioning 747s in service right now as Air Force One. And the federal government has ordered two more Boeing 747s to replace those two versions of Air Force One that are currently operating. But Donald Trump wanted one that he could take home with him. And so the scheme that a Democratic Congress must find a way to prevent is for Donald Trump to take that 747 with him as part of his so-called presidential library and then use it to fly wherever he wants to go after his time in office. The country will never get to fly on that plane, but the country actually ended up having to pay for that plane hundreds of millions of dollars at least to outfit it as a workable version of Air Force One. When asked how much that cost the American taxpayer today, Donald Trump refused to answer.
How much did it cost American taxpayers to upgrade the plane?
Well, it cost very little relative to what it would cost if we did it a different way. So this was a gift from a country that's treated us very well.
By treated us very well, he means, of course, him and his family. Donald Trump doesn't have to be legally careful anymore about his choice of words in situations like this after the Republican-dominated Supreme Court gave him immunity from criminal prosecution for anything he does in his official capacity as president. And so Donald Trump just confessed to actually soliciting this so-called gift. He said, I went to Qatar and said, I'd like to use it. Those are his exact words today. And suddenly, for the first time in world history, a president of the United States was given an airplane from another country. Donald Trump said today that he went to a foreign dictator and asked him for a plane. And he used that plane for the first time today to fly to a dedication of the Theodore Roosevelt Presidential Library. Now, it might seem a little late to just now be dedicating a presidential library to someone who was president more than 100 years ago, but presidential libraries are actually a relatively new thing in presidential history, beginning with President Herbert Hoover, who left office on Inauguration Day in 1933. Teddy Roosevelt was a rich New York Republican, like Donald Trump, who served as president from 1901 to 1909. In a first for presidential library dedication speeches, Donald Trump today did not quote the president who was being commemorated. Because the problem for Donald Trump today, in quoting Teddy Roosevelt, is Teddy Roosevelt saying things like, quote, no man can be a good citizen who is not a good husband and a good father, who is not honest in his dealings with other men and women, faithful to his friends and fearless in the presence of his foes, who has not got a sound heart, a sound mind, and a sound body. Teddy Roosevelt would be horrified by Donald Trump's mode of transportation today. Teddy Roosevelt would have immediately urged the impeachment of a president who solicited a gift from anyone, especially a foreign dictator. And Teddy Roosevelt would have despised the small-mindedness of Donald Trump, because it was Teddy Roosevelt who said, quote, "The screaming vulgarity of the foolish spread-eagle orator who is continually yelling defiance at Europe, praising everything American, good and bad, and resenting the introduction of any reform because it has previously been tried successfully abroad, is offensive and contemptible to the last degree." Offensive and contemptible. That is exactly what Teddy Roosevelt surely would have said about the screaming vulgarity of the foolish spread-eagled orator flying on a counterfeit Air Force One today. Although the 747 is the single largest object Donald Trump has received as president, it is not the highest dollar reward he has obtained by what the Wall Street Journal now calls, quote, profiting off the presidency. New reporting in the New York Times reveals Donald Trump, quote, reaped a stunning windfall in his first year back in the White House, including about $1.4 billion from his family's cryptocurrency businesses. A new filing shows. All told, the president pulled in at least $2.2 billion, a figure that includes other parts of his vast holdings, such as his real estate assets. That compares to a minimum of $622 million his enterprises pulled in for all of 2024 before he returned to the presidency. The New York Times notes that Donald Trump's biggest haul has come from the cryptocurrency business, which he himself is in a position to regulate. Quote, one of his biggest hauls in 2025 came when an investment firm tied to the United Arab Emirates bought nearly half of the Trump family's main crypto company, World Liberty Financial, a transaction that blurred the line between foreign policy and private enterprise. Mr. Trump also collected hundreds of millions of dollars from sales of his Trump meme coin and World Liberty's sale of its own digital tokens. The president's finances, which had been something of a mystery, highlight a conflict in his crypto business. Mr. Trump is a major crypto industry operator and its top policymaker. Tonight, the lead editorial in the Wall Street Journal is headlined "The Trump Family and Honest Graft," with the subheadline, "They are profiting off the presidency in ways that demean the office." The Wall Street Journal editorial says, quote, "The Trumps are seeing their opportunities and taking them in the tradition of what Tammany Hall's George Washington Plunkett called honest graft." For Princeton history majors, Tammany Hall was a 19th century Democratic political machine. Assuming all of this is legal, it's still an unseemly display of using the presidency for family profit. It's hard to believe the Trump boys would be able to do the same deals if Dad wasn't in the Oval Office. If Democrats take back the House or Senate this November, they will have a field day probing the Trump family deals. Charges of GOP corruption will resound through 2028. Foreigners may come to think they can buy American goodwill or favors if they cut the Trumps in on the action. Americans, and especially his supporters, deserve better from this or any president. And here was Donald Trump's defense today for what the Wall Street Journal calls his profiting off the presidency.
To critics who say you're profiting off the presidency, Mr.
Well, you know why I'm profiting? Because the stock market's going up. Everybody's profiting. If you have a 401k, how's your 401k done? It's about up 85%. Thank you, President Trump. So we're all profiting. I'm profiting because I have a lot of money and a lot of cash.
Everybody's profiting. Wall Street coined the phrase taco Trump, to mean Trump always chickens out. But they came up with that term taco only after Donald Trump actually did chicken out on some of his most insane tariff proposals when the deadline for imposing those tariffs arrived. And now Taco Trump is doing it more than a month before the most important deadline he has ever had, the 60-day deadline for negotiating a final agreement with Iran to end his war with Iran. That 60-day deadline is August 18th. And today, the Wall Street Journal is reporting, quote, Trump has told aides he believes another round of full-scale attacks could derail diplomacy and hurt Washington's chances of ultimately dismantling Iran's nuclear program. Trump also has told aides that he is fine if negotiations with Tehran blow past an August 18th deadline for a nuclear deal, the official said. Okay, well, right-wing media can cancel those big tributes they were planning for August 18th when Donald Trump would announce his final breakthrough peace deal with Iran, complete with a nuclear negotiated agreement. Iran reads the Wall Street Journal, too. They saw that line as soon as it was in print today. Quote, he is fine if negotiations with Iran blow past an August 18th deadline for a nuclear deal. And today, when asked about how the negotiations were going, the man who the Washington Post documented told over 30,000 lies in the White House during his first 4 years said this.
As far as things are going, the denuclearization of Iran is moving along well. They've had very good meetings, and we'll see. We hit them very hard for 3 nights, as you know, but we're getting along very well. So I call it the denuclearization, and it's all taking place. It's all going well.
Nothing is taking place. Nothing is going well with Iran. There is no denuclearization. The Iranians won't even talk to Donald Trump's son-in-law or the real estate developer that Donald Trump has sent to talk to them. There have been 0 negotiations about the nuclear material Iran currently possesses or Iran's nuclear future. It's not all taking place. It's not going very well. It is very clear to the Iranian negotiators that Donald Trump cares more about taking a joyride today on a plane given to him by a dictator of a country that Iran attacked during Donald Trump's war, a country that discovered the hard way that Donald Trump cannot protect them, no matter how many flying palaces the dictator gives him. Leading off our discussion tonight is Democratic Congressman Chris Deluzio of Pennsylvania. He's a member of the House Armed Services Committee and a Navy veteran. Congressman Deluzio, one of your great assets that you bring to this discussion is your own personal familiarity patrolling the Strait of Hormuz, which we now discover is going to possibly have a dual toll system on it on each side after the end of the so-called 60 days, when Iran put in writing that at the end of 60 days, they might just start charging for passage through the Strait. And now they might not be the only country doing that.
Lawrence, I did sail through there as a naval officer, and anyone who's worn the uniform, who's worked in national security, would have known that if you started a war with Iran, there was a strong likelihood they would shut down the Strait of Hormuz. And we are in a worse place now than we were before Donald Trump started the war. The energy shocks continue. We continue to pay for it here at home. And I just look at this war and I ask, what was this all for? That more than a dozen Americans dead, the hundreds wounded, Iranian school children even killed, billions of dollars, and for what? This has been a strategic blunder.
And we have Trump staff leaking to the Wall Street Journal that he's perfectly happy to crash through the August 18th deadline. I think that's something that everyone already knew. When you saw the memo of understanding, the idea that the 60 days would actually be a real deadline seemed absurd on its face.
It was. And look, this memorandum of understanding, this MOU, I was on the briefing that Secretary Rubio and Steve Witkoff gave members of Congress, unclassified. Let's be clear about what this MOU, this memorandum of understanding is. It's just an agreement to negotiate. And the basic thrust of that agreement was there wouldn't be fighting. Well, there has been fighting. The Strait of Hormuz has not been opened as promised. Traffic continues to fluctuate. And this thing, again, is just an agreement to negotiate all the rest in hopes that our government can get us back to the situation before Donald Trump started the war. This has, again, as I keep saying, it has been a strategic disaster for Donald Trump.
So the Wall Street Journal is predicting that if the Democrats win the House of Representatives, you will start conducting, your committees will start conducting investigations of the Trump family businesses and possible corruption therein. Is the Wall Street Journal right?
Oh, absolutely. And look, where there's law breaking, we should find it. Where people in Donald Trump's orbit, his family, his advisors, his business associates are shaking down companies or foreign governments, we will find it. And for those on the other side of those purported bribes, they should think twice, because there will be accountability. We will be digging in, we'll be seeking documents, and all the rest. Accountability will come.
And we've already seen that Donald Trump's plan for that plane that he took from that dictator is to somehow fold it into his so-called presidential library so that it will be there for his personal use. What powers does Congress have to prevent that from happening?
Well, the Constitution, as you know, it bars presidents from taking and accepting gifts from foreign powers unless Congress says okay. I can't imagine that Congress would say okay. I'm not going to say okay to that. And let's remember, there already are 2 new Air Force One jets coming down the line to update the fleet. And Donald Trump and his family has plenty of business in Qatar, including a golf course development that's involved with a Qatari-controlled company. I mean, this stuff just reeks of corruption. It's nasty. I think the American people see it for what it is.
We have new reporting showing that Donald Trump's so-called allies in the region of this war that he started are not trusting him, not cooperating with him. Saudi Arabia pulling back on certain agreements, certain assumptions that Donald Trump thought that he had with Saudi Arabia. Apparently a screaming phone call, one of those screaming Trump phone calls between Donald Trump and the dictator of Saudi Arabia. And so he seems to be discovering that that neighborhood is a little more complex than he realized.
It certainly is. I mean, he wasn't able to protect our allies in the Gulf, number one. Number two, he has shown that the United States now under his leadership has been unable to keep the Strait of Hormuz open, to keep commerce and oil flowing out of the Gulf. It has disrupted energy markets. And so I think the world sees this. Certainly allies in the region see it. And remember, this is a president who in his administration, before starting this war with Iran, shut down new clean energy projects that would have made us less exposed to oil shocks that a war with Iran would cause. And that's exactly what we got.
Pennsylvania Congressman Chris Deluzio, thank you very much for starting off our coverage tonight.
Thank you, Lawrence.
And coming up, Senator Sheldon Whitehouse will join us next. The Republican majority on the Supreme Court issued a 6-3 opinion yesterday on campaign finance law, which allows unlimited coordination of campaign spending between political parties and their candidates. Donald Trump called the opinion, quote, a big win for Republicans. And Senator Sheldon Whitehouse read the opinion this way, quote, by blessing this overtly partisan challenge to a common sense election spending limit, the extremist wing of the court again delivered the goods for the GOP billionaires and right-wing special interests who captured it. Last night on this program, Senator Cory Booker said this.
This is a corrupt court, and we know that because there's a billionaire class, and my brother, Senator Whitehouse, points this out so much. There's a billionaire class that circles around this. They lavish Supreme Court members with gifts, RVs, paying family tuitions, lavish vacations. In New Jersey, if a judge did that, they would be carried out in handcuffs, put in prison.
And joining us now is Democratic Senator Sheldon Whitehouse of Rhode Island, a member of the Senate Judiciary Committee. Senator, Donald Trump says he greets this opinion as, quote, a big win for Republicans. He agrees, apparently, with Senator Booker and with you.
Yeah, and if you wanted another clue, the petitioner in the case was the National Republican Senate Committee. So, yeah, this is a big win for Republicans. And it's important for people looking at this to not just look at what gets said in these decisions by the justices writing the opinions, but to look at the pattern. Because what you see is a relentless pattern of this captured Supreme Court in every major political decision, having the decision go in favor of the Republican Party. We saw it with gerrymandering, when the huge Republican red map effort took place that turned Congress into the hands of the Republican